right, Erwin. So your project is about the emptiness of things, really, right? How everything came screeching to a halt with the pandemic and these normal things of, I think you said, taking your nephews to the park or sitting down and having a cup of coffee on a bench. All of this has stopped. Having a barbecue with friends has all stopped. So you're documenting this park that's not being used. There's no one in sight. So when you look at the images, on one hand, they're very normal looking, right? You're just taking pictures of a playground, but having them all together, we start to notice the absence. You might not notice the absence if you're just looking at one of these images, but when we look at them as a whole, we see that repetition of no one being there. We'll start off looking at these technically, and your ISO is low for all of them. You keep it at 100. Your aperture, let's see, you're 5.6, 7.1. So you really keep it in that mid-range for all of the images. There's some images that are really going to benefit from a wider aperture and maybe even getting closer to the subject. This would be the main example of that, where you could create more separation between that toy of the kind of airplane it looks like in the foreground and the elephant in the background. There's a lot of overlap happening there. And by opening up your aperture wider, probably 3.5 is as wide as your lens goes, yeah, that would allow you to have more separation between the foreground and the background. In other images, you might want more depth of field. For example, this image, it's kind of busy in the background with all of everything that's going on in the background, all of these tables and garbage cans and hot coals. There's a lot going on. But seeing all of that detail and seeing the emptiness of all of that detail tells the narrative. So you might want more depth of field. So shooting this maybe at f22 or f16 to make sure we're almost overwhelmed by the detail in the background. Let's look at those shutter speeds. You're keeping them nice and fast for all of these. That looks good. So the exposures all look good. Nothing's getting blown out. You don't have any issues with images being overexposed or underexposed. So I would just make some adjustments in how you're getting those exposures, how you're adjusting your aperture and shutter speed for each image. Also, something that I noticed is these are all horizontal shots. And on one hand, that's totally fine. There's no big, shoot horizontal or vertical. It doesn't matter. But sometimes students get in the habit of just shooting one way. So I just want to bring it up, not as a critique of this project, but just to remind you to change the way that you're photographing. Because an image like this, maybe shooting this as a vertical would make more sense. Or even, well, this may be more of a horizontal, but you know what I'm saying. This image might lend itself more to a vertical shot. The light in your image is not necessarily the most pleasing light for these situations. It looks like the light changed. Maybe you got a little cloud cover part of the way through. But photographing in the middle of the afternoon, when these places would normally be full of families and kids and whatnot, tells that narrative. So I don't think it's the most flattering lighting. It's not adding the most depth to the images, but it is part of the narrative, is seeing that this is the middle of the day and that nothing's going on. The color of your images, you have some bright blues and bright greens that pull us through and kind of keep us seeing the repetition of that. So the repetition of the blue garbage can in the background there, or well, this is the bench here, in the background there, on the toy here, or this green that's on the play set here and here and here, and then on the trees, obviously, and grass in the other images. So the color seems to really pull the images together. The composition, I think the images where you're getting lower and you're kind of shooting up to your subject, using elongation, using the line and pattern here are working really well. You're pulling out these shapes from the backgrounds. So the shape of the basketball hoop and stand, the shape of these poles, the shape of the play structure as a whole, all of these are being pulled out. And like I said, I think color is being used really well as a compositional element in these images. Something I do notice is these were all shot within a pretty short amount of time, and I think if you would come out here on multiple days, you might be able to gather more information. So maybe you'll find a sign, maybe you'll see more cones that are out, like telling kids not to be there. Maybe this is a sign here that would tell us more information about not being able to access the playground. So just spending a little bit more time on your project. As you can review in the academic honesty policy, we expect quite a bit of time on all of your projects. 6 hours a module photographing. So this looks like it was shot in, I don't know, about 15 or 20 minutes. So just expanding that amount of time, I think, would help your project and build it out more. Let's take a look at your contact sheet, see if anything stands out there. Yeah, I think getting underneath this area where all those tables were could be a nice addition because it really shows the multitude and the repetition of the tables, which emphasizes the emptiness of everything. But overall, nice job on this project. It's a good idea for a final project. It's obviously very timely as to everything that's going on in the world, and I think you did a nice job photographing it.